How did my son stop mid-sentence after promising my house to his wife while I scrubbed furniture in my new place? He thought I was already removed from the board, but when the line went quiet, he understood what it meant to take the wrong thing from the wrong man. Before we go any further, take a second to subscribe, hit the hype button, and like the video. It really helps the channel grow. And tell us in the comments, what would you do in this situation? I was wiping down the wooden frame of an old chair when I heard it. Brooks's voice came through the wall, clear and casual, like he was ordering lunch. I lived in a studio now. 1 room, kitchenette, bathroom the size of a closet. The walls were thin enough that I could hear my neighbor's television at night. Thin enough that when my son stood outside in the parking lot, talking on his phone, I heard every word. "Yeah, we're looking at early spring," he said. "The old man's almost done moving out. Place'll be ours by April, maybe sooner." I stopped wiping. The rag hung in my hand, suspended over the chair leg. "No, he doesn't know yet," Brooks continued. "But he won't fight it. He never does." There was a pause, then laughter, not his, but hers. Ariel, my daughter-in-law. I could picture her in their apartment across town, phone pressed to her ear, already planning which walls to paint first. "Are you serious?" Her voice was faint but audible. "You already promised him we'd take it?" "Relax," Brooks said. "It's handled. He signed everything over years ago. Trust me, babe, that house is ours." I set the rag down on the chair and walked to the window. My studio faced the parking lot, and through the glass I could see him, 32 years old, standing beside his car, one hand in his pocket. He looked relaxed, confident. He looked like a man who'd already won. I'd been cleaning furniture for 3 hours. My back hurt. My knees hurt. I was 58 years old, and I'd spent the last 2 weeks moving my life into a space smaller than the garage I used to park in. Everything I owned fit into this room now. A bed, a table, 4 chairs, a lamp, a dresser with 3 drawers that stuck when you pulled them. Brooks ended the call and got into his car. I watched him drive away. That night I sat at the table and opened a folder I hadn't touched in years. Inside were documents, property records, mortgage statements, legal papers from the divorce. I spread them out and read through each one, line by line, the way I used to read blueprints at the machine shop. Slow, methodical, making sure I understood exactly what I was looking at. The house was in my name. It had always been in my name. When my wife left, she'd signed her half over to me as part of the settlement. Brooks had been 10 years old then. He'd stayed with her most of the time, visited me on weekends, and eventually stopped visiting at all. By the time he turned 18, we barely spoke. By the time he got married, I was someone he called twice a year, once on my birthday, once on his. But the house was still mine. I closed the folder and stared at the wall. The neighbor's television hummed through the drywall, some game show with canned laughter and applause. I could hear every word of it, every fake cheer, every scripted reaction. The next morning, I went to work. The CNC shop floor was loud, machines whirring, metal grinding, the sharp smell of coolant and oil. I'd worked there for 34 years, running the same machines, cutting the same parts, day after day. Most of the younger guys ignored me. To them, I was just another old-timer marking time until retirement. At lunch, I sat in the break room with my sandwich and a cup of coffee. 3 guys from the day shift were at the other table, talking about football. One of them glanced at me, then looked away. I didn't exist to them. I was furniture. Brooks used to work here too, about 10 years back. He'd lasted 8 months before quitting, said the job was beneath him. He'd gone into sales after that. Something with office supplies, then insurance, then real estate. He changed jobs the way other people changed shoes, but he always acted like he'd figured something out that I never could. Frank Caldwell walked in halfway through lunch. He was the floor supervisor, 61, bald as a cue ball, with hands that looked like they'd been carved from wood. He nodded at me and poured himself a coffee. "Dean," he said. "Frank." He sat down at my table, which surprised me. Frank didn't usually sit with anyone. "Heard you moved," he said. "Yeah." "How's the new place?" "Small." He nodded and sipped his coffee. "You doing okay?" I looked at him. Frank had been my supervisor for 20 years. He'd seen me come in every day, on time, never missed a shift, never caused trouble. He knew my work. He knew I could run a machine tighter than anyone else in the shop, but he'd never asked me if I was okay before. "I'm fine," I said. He didn't look convinced, but he didn't press it. He finished his coffee and stood up. "Let me know if you need anything," he said. I nodded. He left. That afternoon, I ran a batch of parts, small aluminum components for a medical equipment manufacturer. The machine hummed and spun, the cutting tool gliding through metal with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. I watched the readout on the screen, checked the measurements, adjusted the feed rate. Everything had to be exact. One mistake, one miscalculation, and the whole batch was ruined. I didn't make mistakes. After work, I took the bus home. I didn't own a car anymore, sold it last month to cover the deposit on the studio. The bus stopped 6 blocks from my building, and I walked the rest of the way in the rain. By the time I got inside, my jacket was soaked through. I made dinner, canned soup and bread, and ate it standing at the counter. The television stayed off. I didn't need the noise. At 8 o'clock, my phone rang. Brooks. "Hey, Dad," he said. His voice was bright, cheerful. "How's it going?" "Fine." "Good, good. Listen, I wanted to talk to you about something." I waited. "Ariel and I have been thinking," he said, "about the house. You know, your old place." "What about it?" "Well, we were wondering, since you're not living there anymore, if maybe we could take it off your hands. You know, help you out. One less thing to worry about." I didn't say anything. "We'd take care of everything," he continued. "Maintenance, taxes, all of it. You wouldn't have to think about it. And honestly, Dad, it's just sitting there empty. Seems like a waste, right?" "I'll think about it," I said. "Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Take your time." I hung up. I stood there in the kitchenette, phone in my hand, listening to the silence. Then I opened the folder again and pulled out one specific document, a notarized power of attorney form from 15 years ago. I read it twice, then put it back. Brooks thought I didn't understand. He thought I was too old, too tired, too beaten down to see what he was doing. He thought I'd just hand it over because that's what I'd always done. Stepped aside, stayed quiet, let other people take what they wanted. He thought wrong. The hardware store was 3 blocks from my studio. I walked there on Saturday morning because I needed a new lock for the apartment door. The one that came with the place was loose, and the key stuck every time I tried to turn it. Inside, the store smelled like sawdust and rubber. I found the aisle with the locks and spent 10 minutes comparing brands. A kid in an orange apron walked past me twice without asking if I needed help. The third time, I flagged him down. "Excuse me," I said. He stopped, looking annoyed. "Yeah? Which of these would you recommend?" He glanced at the locks, shrugged. "I don't know, man. They're all pretty much the same." "They're not." He stared at me. "Okay. Well, I don't really know about locks. Then maybe find someone who does." He walked away without another word. I stood there for a moment, holding a deadbolt in my hand, and realized something. To people like him, I was invisible. I was just an old guy in a hardware store, wasting time, asking stupid questions. I didn't matter. Good. I bought the lock and left. On the way back, I passed the house, my house, the one Brooks thought was his. I didn't plan to stop, but I slowed down when I saw the driveway. Empty. The lawn needed mowing. One of the shutters hung crooked. I'd lived there for 26 years. Bought it when Brooks was 4. His mother had picked out the paint colors, the curtains, the furniture. She'd planted roses in the front yard, and I'd built a swing set in the back. Brooks used to play there every afternoon after school, climbing the ladder, sliding down, yelling for me to watch. Then she left, and the house became quiet. I kept walking. Back at the studio, I installed the new lock. It took me 40 minutes, but when I was done, the key turned smooth and the bolt slid into place with a solid click. I tested it 3 times, then sat down at the table. The folder was still there, open, papers spread across the surface. I picked up the power of attorney form and read it again. My ex-wife had signed it during the divorce, transferring her interest in the property to me. Brooks didn't know about it. He'd been too young to understand, and later, when he was older, no one had bothered to explain it to him. He assumed the house was joint property. He assumed I'd signed something that gave him rights to it. He assumed wrong. I thought about the phone call, about the way he'd said it, casual, confident, like it was already decided. The old man's almost done moving out. Place'll be ours by April. He'd been planning this for a while. I closed the folder and stood up. My back ached from bending over the lock installation, so I stretched, rolling my shoulders, feeling the stiffness in my joints. 58 wasn't old, but it wasn't young either. The body kept track of every year, every mistake, every hour spent standing on a concrete floor. I thought about work. 34 years at the same shop, running the same machines. I'd trained half the guys on that floor. I'd taught them how to read a blueprint, how to set a tool path, how to check their measurements, and now they looked through me like I was glass. Brooks had worked there for 8 months. He'd complained the entire time about the noise, the hours, the pay. He'd told me once that he didn't understand how I could stand it, doing the same thing every day, year after year. He'd said it like it was an insult, but I knew something he didn't. Precision takes patience. It takes discipline. You can't rush a machine. You can't force a cut. You have to understand the material, the tool, the process. You have to respect it. Brooks had never learned that. On Monday, I went back to work. The shop was the same as always. Loud, hot, full of the smell of metal and oil. I clocked in, checked the schedule, and started setting up my machine for the day's run. Frank walked by around mid-morning. "Dean," he said, "got a minute?" I shut down the machine and followed him to his office, a small room with a desk, a filing cabinet, and a window that overlooked the floor. He closed the door behind us. "I heard something," he said. "Wanted to check if it was true." I waited. "Word is your son's been talking, saying you're moving into a home, saying you're done." I looked at him. "Where'd you hear that?" "Couple of the guys. They ran into him at a bar last week. He was telling people you'd signed everything over to him. House, accounts, all of it." I didn't react, just stood there, hands at my sides. "Is it true?" Frank asked. "No." He nodded slowly. "Figured, but I wanted to ask." "Appreciate it. Dean." He leaned back against his desk. "I've known you a long time. You're the best machinist I've got. But if something's going on, if you need help, you tell me. Understand?" "I understand." He studied my face for a moment, then nodded again. "All right, get back to it." I left his office and returned to my machine. The other guys on the floor were watching, but they looked away when I glanced at them. They'd heard the rumors, too. They thought I was finished. At lunch, I sat alone. No one joined me. The break room was full, but the chairs around my table stayed empty. I ate my sandwich and drank my coffee and didn't say a word. That night, I called a number I hadn't used in 8 years. It rang 4 times before someone picked up. "Whitman Legal," a woman's voice said. "I need to speak with Laura Whitman," I said. "May I ask what this is regarding?" "Property law. It's personal." There was a pause. "Your name?" "Dean Calix." "One moment." The line went quiet. I waited, staring at the wall of my studio, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator. Then, "Dean?" Laura Whitman's voice was the same as I remembered. Calm, professional, with just a hint of warmth underneath. She'd handled my divorce 8 years ago. walked me through every document, every clause, every signature. She'd been patient when I didn't understand something, and firm when I needed to be. "Laura," I said, "I need your help." Laura's office was on the second floor of a building downtown, above a coffee shop that smelled like burnt espresso and cinnamon. I took the stairs because the elevator was broken, and by the time I reached her door, my knees were complaining. She met me in the waiting room, late 50s, gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing a dark blazer and glasses that sat low on her nose. She shook my hand and led me into her office. "It's been a while," she said, gesturing to a chair across from her desk. 8 years. "How have you been?" "Fine." She didn't believe me, but she didn't push it. She sat down, folded her hands on the desk, and waited. I opened the folder I'd brought with me and slid the documents across to her. "I need you to look at these." She picked them up and started reading. Her expression didn't change, but I saw her eyes move faster as she got deeper into the stack. After a few minutes, she set them down and looked at me. "Walk me through it," she said. I told her about Brooks, about the phone call in the parking lot, about the rumors at work, about the conversation where he'd asked to take the house off my hands. Laura listened without interrupting. When I finished, she picked up the power of attorney form and studied it. "This gives you sole authority over the property," she said. "Your ex-wife relinquished all claims during the divorce. As far as the law is concerned, the house is entirely yours." "That's what I thought. Does your son know this?" "No." "Does he have any legal claim to the property? Any documentation that suggests otherwise?" "Not that I know of." She nodded slowly. "Then he's operating under a false assumption. The question is, what do you want to do about it?" I looked at her. "What can I do?" She leaned back in her chair. "You have several options. The most straightforward would be to simply tell him the truth, that the house is yours, that you haven't signed anything over, and that you have no intention of doing so. And if he doesn't believe me, then you escalate. You can have me draft a formal letter, something that makes your position clear in legal terms. If he still doesn't back down, you can pursue a restraining order or file for harassment." I shook my head. "That's not what I want." "What do you want?" I thought about it. About Brooke standing in the parking lot, confident and careless. About Ariel laughing on the other end of the phone. About the way they'd talked about my house like it was already theirs. "I want him to understand," I said. Laura studied me for a long moment. "Understand what?" "That he made a mistake." She didn't ask me to clarify. She just nodded, picked up a pen and started writing notes on a legal pad. "All right," she said. "Here's what we're going to do." She explained it in steps. First, we'd verify the property records, make sure there were no liens, no secondary claims, nothing that could complicate things. Second, we'd confirm my signature authority, ensure that no one else could make changes without my explicit consent. Third, we'd schedule a notary appointment, just to document everything in case it became necessary later. "None of this changes the ownership," she said, "but it creates a paper trail. If your son tries to claim otherwise, we'll have evidence." "How long will it take?" "A week, maybe 2. I'll need to pull records from the county, verify the mortgage status, and review the original divorce settlement. But it's straightforward. There shouldn't be any surprises." I thanked her and stood to leave. "Dean," she said as I reached the door, "can I ask you something?" I turned back. "Why now? If your son's been assuming this for years, why address it now?" "Because he stopped assuming," I said. "He started promising." She nodded. "Fair enough." I left her office and walked back down the stairs. The coffee shop was crowded, full of people on laptops and phones, all of them talking at once. I pushed through the door and stepped out onto the street. The bus ride home took 40 minutes. I sat in the back, watching the city roll past the window, old buildings, new construction, strip malls, fast food chains. Everything looked the same, But it wasn't. It was always changing, always shifting, always moving forward without asking if you were ready. Brooks called that night. I let it ring 3 times before answering. "Hey, Dad," he said. "I was thinking about what we talked about. You know, with the house." "Yeah?" "Ariel and I were going over the numbers, and we think we could take it off your hands pretty soon. Maybe even next month." "Next month?" "Yeah. I mean, there's no rush, but the sooner the better, right? Get it settled, move on." I didn't respond. "Dad? I'm here. So what do you think? Can we move forward?" "I'll let you know," I said. "Okay, but, like, soon, right? We're kind of planning around this. I'll let you know." I hung up before he could say anything else. The next morning, I went to the bank. It was a small branch, the kind with 2 tellers and a manager who sat at a desk in the corner. I waited in line for 10 minutes, then approached the counter. "I need to verify my account status," I said. The teller, a young woman with bright red nails, looked up at me. "Sure, I'll need your ID and account number." I handed them over. She typed something into her computer, frowned, typed some more. "Everything looks normal," she said. "Is there something specific you're concerned about?" "I want to make sure no one else has access." She checked again. "Nope, you're the only authorized person on this account." "Good." She handed my ID back. "Anything else?" "That's it." I left the bank and stood outside for a moment, watching the traffic. A woman walked past me with a stroller. A man in a suit hurried by, phone pressed to his ear. Everyone moving, everyone busy. I thought about Brooks, about the way he'd said, "We're kind of planning around this." Like it was a done deal, like I'd already agreed. He thought I was weak. He thought I was finished. He thought I'd just roll over and let him take what he wanted, because that's what I'd always done. He was about to learn otherwise. The notary's office was in a small building near the courthouse, sandwiched between a bail bonds place and a tax prep service. Inside, it smelled like old paper and air freshener. A woman sat behind the front desk, mid-30s, hair pulled into a tight ponytail, typing on a keyboard with the kind of speed that suggested she'd been doing it for years. "Help you?" she said without looking up. "I have an appointment," I said. "Dean Calix." She checked her screen, nodded, and pointed to a row of chairs along the wall. "Have a seat. Natalie will be with you in a minute." I sat down and waited. The chairs were uncomfortable, hard plastic, no cushions. There was a water cooler in the corner, but the cup dispenser was empty. A clock on the wall ticked loudly, each second punctuated like a hammer strike. After 5 minutes, a door opened, and a woman stepped out. Natalie Brooks. The name was on a badge pinned to her shirt. She looked tired, like she'd been dealing with people all day and wasn't thrilled about dealing with another one. "Calix," she said. "That's me. Come on back." I followed her into a small office, desk, filing cabinet, a notary stamp sitting in the center of a stack of papers. She gestured to a chair, and I sat. "What do you need notarized?" she asked. I pulled the documents from my folder and handed them to her. "Property verification, signature confirmation." She skimmed through the pages, her expression neutral. "This is pretty standard. You just need me to witness and stamp?" "That's right." "ID?" I handed her my driver's license. She examined it, compared it to the name on the documents, then nodded. "All right. Sign here, here, and here." I signed where she indicated. She watched me do it, then picked up her stamp and pressed it onto each page. 3 solid thumps that echoed in the small room. "Done," she said, handing the papers back. "That'll be $45. I paid her in cash. She wrote out a receipt, gave me a copy, and stood up. "Anything else?" she asked. "No, thank you." She walked me back to the front desk, then disappeared into her office again. I left the building and stood on the sidewalk, the notarized documents in my hand. This was it. Everything was documented now. If Brooks tried to claim the house, If he tried to forge a signature or fabricate a transfer, there was a paper trail that would stop him cold. I walked 3 blocks to a coffee kiosk near the courthouse. It was one of those small operations, just a cart and an awning, run by a guy who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I ordered a black coffee and sat on a bench nearby. The courthouse loomed across the street, all stone and columns, with an American flag hanging above the entrance. People walked in and out, lawyers in suits, families in casual clothes, a few cops in uniform. Everyone moving with purpose, everyone headed somewhere. I sipped my coffee and thought about Brooks. He'd called twice more since the last conversation. Both times I'd let it go to voicemail. The first message was casual, just checking in, hoping to hear back soon. The second was more insistent. He wanted an answer. He wanted me to commit. I didn't call him back. Instead, I called Laura. "It's done," I said when she picked up. "The notary?" "Yeah, everything's documented." "Good. That gives us a solid foundation. If your son tries anything now, we have proof that you maintained full control of the property throughout." "What's next?" "Now we wait. If he pushes, we respond. If he backs off, we don't escalate." "And if he doesn't back off?" "Then we make it official. I draft a cease and desist, send it to him directly, and make it clear that any further attempts to claim the property will result in legal action." I didn't respond. "Dean," she said, "are you sure about this? Once we go down that road, there's no coming back. Your relationship with your son, whatever's left of it, will be over." "It's already over," I said. She was quiet for a moment. "All right. I'll start drafting the letter, but I won't send it until you give me the word." "Understood." I hung up and finished my coffee. The guy at the kiosk was closing up for the day, pulling down the awning, locking the cash box. He glanced at me once, then looked away. That night, Brooks called again. This time, I answered. "Dad," he said, and I could hear the relief in his voice. "Finally, I've been trying to reach you." "I know." "So, listen. Ariel and I are ready to move forward. We've already started looking at contractors, figuring out what we want to do with the place. We're thinking new floors, maybe knock out a wall or two. Really open it up, you know." I didn't say anything. "Dad? You there?" "I'm here." "Okay, good. So can we finalize this? I need to know if we're good to go." "No," I said. "What?" "No. You're not good to go." There was a pause. "I don't understand." "The house isn't yours, Brooks. It never was." "What are you talking about? You said—" "I didn't say anything. You assumed." "But I thought—" "You thought wrong." His voice changed, got sharper. "Wait. Are you backing out? Because we've already put money down on contractors. We've already—" "I didn't back out because I was never in. The house is mine. It stays mine." "That's not fair." "Fair?" I almost laughed. "You want to talk about fair? We've been planning this for months. Without asking me. Because you never—" He stopped himself, took a breath. "Look, Dad, I know things have been hard for you. I know you're going through a rough time. But Ariel and I, we can take care of the house. We can make sure it's maintained. Make sure it's—" "No." "Dad?" I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. I let it ring. It went to voicemail, and a few seconds later, it rang again. I turned it off and set it on the table. Outside, the rain started, a soft patter against the window that gradually grew louder. I stood there in the dark, listening to it, feeling the silence of the room settle around me. Brooks thought he could talk his way out of it. He thought he could convince me, guilt me, pressure me into giving him what he wanted. He still didn't understand, but he would. The factory floor was louder than usual on Tuesday morning. Someone had started a second shift early, and the machines were running at full capacity, drills whining, saws grinding, the sharp metallic smell of coolant mixing with the heat. I clocked in, grabbed my safety glasses, and headed to my station. Frank was waiting for me. "Dean," he said, "need to talk." I followed him to his office. He closed the door and leaned against his desk, arms crossed. "Your son came by yesterday," he said. I didn't respond. "He was asking about you. Wanted to know if you were still working here, if you were okay, if you'd mentioned anything about health issues." "What did you tell him?" "Told him you were fine. Told him you show up every day, do your job, no problems." Frank paused. He didn't seem to like that answer. I bet he didn't. "Dean, I don't know what's going on between you two, and it's none of my business. But if he comes back, I'm not letting him on the floor. He's not an employee, and he's got no reason to be here." "Appreciate it." Frank studied me for a moment. "You need anything, you tell me. Understand?" "I understand." I went back to my station and started the day's run. The machine hummed, the cutting tool bit into aluminum, and shavings curled away from the blade like ribbons. I watched the readout, adjusted the feed rate, checked the measurements. Everything had to be exact. At lunch, I sat alone again. The break room was full, but no one sat near me. The rumors had spread. Everyone knew something was going on, but no one knew what. They looked at me like I was a problem they didn't want to get involved in. Fine. I didn't need their involvement. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw a text from Brooks. "We need to talk. This is ridiculous." I deleted it and put the phone away. After work, I took the bus home. The route went past my old house, and I glanced out the window as we drove by. Brooks's car was in the driveway. So was Ariel's. They were inside, in my house, without permission. I got off at my stop and walked to the studio. The rain had stopped, but the streets were still wet, puddles reflecting the streetlights. I unlocked my door, stepped inside, and set my bag down. The phone rang. Brooks again. "What?" I said. "Dad, we need to figure this out." "There's nothing to figure out." "Yes, there is. You can't just change your mind like this. We've been planning." "I didn't change my mind. You never asked for my permission in the first place." "That's not true. I told you what we were thinking. You didn't say no. I didn't say yes either. But you didn't stop us. You let us think. I let you think what you wanted to think. That's not my problem. Dad, please, can we sit down and talk about this? Face to face?" I thought about it. About Brooks sitting across from me, trying to negotiate, trying to manipulate, trying to make me feel guilty for not giving him what he wanted. "No," I said. "Why not?" "Because there's nothing to talk about." "You're being unreasonable." "Am I?" "Yes. Ariel's already quit her job. We've already signed a lease. We were going to move in next month." "Then I guess you made some bad decisions." "Dad?" I hung up. The phone rang again. I turned it off. I stood in the kitchenette, staring at the wall, feeling the weight of the day settle over me. My back ached. My knees ached. I was tired. Not just physically, but in a way that went deeper than muscle and bone. I thought about the house. About the years I'd spent there, the work I'd put into it. The roof I'd replaced, the deck I'd built, the plumbing I'd fixed. Every inch of that place had my labor in it, my time, my effort, and Brooks thought he could just take it. The next morning, Laura called. "Your son contacted me," she said. "What?" "He found my office number and called. Wanted to know what you'd filed, what kind of legal action you were taking." "What did you tell him?" "Nothing. I told him I couldn't discuss a client's case without their permission. He wasn't happy about it." "I bet." "Dean, he's getting desperate. That makes him unpredictable. You need to be careful." "I am being careful." "Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're backing him into a corner. And when people get cornered, they do stupid things." "He's already done stupid things." "Then don't give him a reason to do worse." I thought about that. About Brooks standing in the driveway, watching me drive past. About Ariel inside the house, planning renovations, picking out furniture. What do you recommend? I asked. Escalate formally. Let me send the cease and desist. Make it clear that if he enters the property again, you'll pursue legal action. That puts everything on record and gives you leverage if things get worse. Do it, I said. You're sure? I'm sure. She paused. All right. I'll have it drafted by tomorrow and sent by the end of the week. I hung up and looked at the clock. 7:30. Time to get ready for work. The factory floor felt different that day. The machines were the same, the noise was the same, but something had shifted. I could feel it in the way people looked at me, not with pity anymore, but with something else. Curiosity, maybe, or respect. Frank walked by mid-morning and gave me a nod. Just a small gesture, but it meant something. At lunch, one of the younger guys sat at my table. His name was Trevor, 24, worked the lathe on the other side of the floor. He set his tray down and glanced at me. Mind if I sit? He asked. It's a free country. He ate in silence for a few minutes, then said, I heard about your son. I looked at him. Yeah? Yeah. Heard he's been causing trouble. Something like that. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. I didn't respond. My dad went through something similar. Trevor continued. My brother tried to pull the same thing, convinced him to sign over his savings, then disappeared. Took my dad 3 years to recover. He never got the money back. I'm sorry. Don't be. Just saying, people like that, they don't stop unless you make them. He finished his lunch and stood up. Anyway, good luck. He walked away, and I sat there, staring at my empty tray. That night, I called Brooks one last time. Dad? He said. Listen, I'm sorry about before. I was upset. But we can work this out, right? No, I said. We can't. What do you mean? You're getting a letter from my attorney. Read it, follow it, or don't. Your choice. Dad, wait. I ended the call. The letter arrived at Brooks's apartment on Thursday morning. I know because he called me 12 minutes later, and I could hear the paper rustling in the background. What the hell is this? He said. I didn't answer. A cease and desist? Are you serious? Very serious. You're threatening me with legal action. I'm your son, and you're trespassing on my property. It's not trespassing if you never told us to leave. I'm telling you now. He was quiet for a moment. Then, this is insane. You're acting like I'm some kind of criminal. You tried to steal my house. I didn't steal anything. You thought wrong. Dad, please, can we talk about this? Without the lawyers. Without all this. No. Why are you doing this? I thought about the question. About all the years I'd spent being quiet, being compliant, being the person everyone else expected me to be. About the way Brooks had grown up watching that, learning from it, thinking it meant I was weak. Because you need to learn, I said. Learn what? That you can't take things from people just because you think they won't fight back. He laughed, bitter, sharp. Is that what this is? You're trying to teach me a lesson? Call it what you want. You're unbelievable, you know that? Absolutely unbelievable. I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. I turned it off and set it on the table. That afternoon, I went to the house. It was the first time I'd been there in weeks. I parked my rental car across the street and just sat there, looking at it. The lawn was overgrown. The mailbox was crooked. One of the gutters had come loose and hung at an angle. It looked abandoned, neglected. Brooks's car wasn't in the driveway. Neither was Ariel's. I got out and walked up to the front door. The lock had been changed. I could see the new hardware, shiny and clean against the old wood. I pulled out my keys, but they didn't fit anymore. They'd locked me out of my own house. I stood there for a moment, staring at the door. Then I walked around to the back. The sliding glass door to the patio was locked too, but the window above the kitchen sink was open, just a crack, but enough. I climbed in. Inside, the house smelled stale. Dust hung in the air, visible in the sunlight that streamed through the windows. The furniture was gone, the couch, the chairs, the dining table, all of it removed, probably sold or thrown away. But the walls were still there, the floors were still there, the bones of the place were intact. I walked through each room, checking everything. The bedrooms were empty, the bathrooms were untouched. In the master bedroom, I found a stack of boxes in the corner, contractor estimates, paint samples, fabric swatches. Ariel's handwriting was on the labels: living room, kitchen, guest bath. They'd been planning the renovation in detail. I left the boxes where they were and went back downstairs. In the kitchen, I found a note taped to the refrigerator. Call Tony about cabinets, 555-0147. I pulled out my phone and took a picture of the note. Then I took pictures of the empty rooms, the contractor estimates, the paint samples. Evidence. When I was done, I climbed back out the window and walked to my car. Brooks called again that night. I answered. "You were at the house," he said. "Yes." "You can't just break in like that." "I didn't break in. It's my house. We changed the locks. Without my permission. Because you wouldn't give us keys. Because it's not your house." He was breathing hard, angry. "You know what? Fine. You want to play it this way? We'll play it this way. But don't think I'm just going to walk away. I'm not. Good. Because I'm not done." He hung up. I set the phone down and looked at the pictures I'd taken. The empty rooms, the contractor estimates, the note on the refrigerator. They'd already started dismantling my life, piece by piece, assuming I wouldn't notice or wouldn't care. They were wrong. The next morning I called Laura. "They changed the locks," I said. "On your property?" "Yes." "Without your permission?" "Yes." She was quiet for a moment. "That's illegal. You can file for unlawful exclusion. It's a misdemeanor, but it'll force them to restore access." "Do it." "Dean, are you sure? This is escalating fast." "I'm sure." "All right. I'll file the motion today. You should have access back within a week." "Thank you." I hung up and went to work. The factory floor was the same as always, but I felt different. Lighter, somehow, like I'd been carrying something heavy for years and had finally set it down. Frank walked by and gave me a nod. Trevor waved from across the floor. One of the older guys, a man named Ray who I'd trained 15 years ago, stopped at my station. "Heard you're dealing with some family stuff," he said. "Yeah." "Good luck with it." "Thanks." He walked away, and I went back to work. At lunch, I sat alone again, but this time it didn't bother me. I ate my sandwich, drank my coffee, and thought about the next steps. Brooks wasn't going to give up. He was going to fight, going to push, going to try every angle he could think of. But he was running out of angles. The law was on my side. The documentation was on my side. The truth was on my side. All I had to do was wait. That night, my phone buzzed with a text from Brooks. "You're making a huge mistake." I didn't respond. Another text. "Ariel's pregnant." I stared at the screen. Another text. "We need that house. Please." I turned off the phone. Pregnant. They were going to have a baby, and they thought that changed things. They thought it gave them leverage, made their claim more legitimate. It didn't. A child didn't entitle them to my property. A child didn't erase what they'd tried to do. I sat in the dark, listening to the silence, and felt nothing. No guilt, no sympathy, no doubt. They'd made their choices. Now, they'd live with the consequences. The motion was filed on Monday. By Wednesday, I had my keys back. New locks installed by a locksmith Laura had hired, with only my name on the authorization. Brooks and Ariel were officially barred from the property pending a hearing. I didn't go to the house right away. I waited until Saturday, took the bus across town, and walked up the driveway like I'd done 1,000 times before. The new locks worked perfectly. Inside, the house was still empty, still stale, but it was mine again. I spent the afternoon cleaning, swept the floors, wiped down the counters, opened the windows to let fresh air in. The place had been neglected, but it wasn't ruined. A little work, and it would be fine. Around 4 o'clock, I heard a car pull up outside. I looked out the window and saw Brooks's vehicle in the driveway. He got out, walked to the front door, and tried his key. It didn't work. He tried again, then started knocking. "Dad, I know you're in there." I didn't answer. "Dad, open the door." I walked to the living room and stood where he couldn't see me, listening. "This is ridiculous," he shouted. "You can't just lock us out. We have rights." He kept knocking, kept shouting. After a few minutes, Ariel got out of the car and joined him. She said something I couldn't hear, and he nodded. Then he kicked the door. I pulled out my phone and called the police. 911, what's your emergency? "Someone's trying to break into my house," I said. "I'm inside, and they're outside trying to force entry." "Are you safe?" "For now." "What's the address?" I gave it to them. "Officers are on the way. Stay on the line." Brooks kicked the door again, harder this time. The wood cracked but didn't give. "Brooks," Ariel said, "stop, this isn't worth it. He can't do this." "He already did. Come on, let's just go." "No." He kicked again. The crack widened. Then I heard the sirens. Brooks heard them too. He stopped, looked at Ariel, and swore. They ran back to the car and drove off just as the police cruiser turned onto the street. 2 officers got out and approached the house. I opened the door and met them on the porch. "You called about a break-in?" one of them asked. "Yes. My son tried to force entry. He just left." "Is he still in the area?" "No. He drove off when he heard the sirens." The officer looked at the door, saw the damage, and nodded. "You want to press charges?" I thought about it. About Brooks in handcuffs, about the court case, about the permanent record. "Yes," I said. The officer took my statement. I showed them the damage, explained the situation, gave them Brooks's name and address. They wrote it all down, took pictures, and said someone from the investigative unit would follow up. After they left, I stood on the porch and looked at the cracked door. Brooks had crossed a line. He'd gone from entitlement to destruction, from arrogance to desperation, and now there was a police report. I went back inside and called Laura. "They tried to break in," I said. "When?" "Just now. Police came. I pressed charges." She was quiet for a moment. "Dean, this is serious. If he's convicted, he could face jail time." "I know. Are you okay with that?" "Yes," I said. "All right. I'll coordinate with the prosecutor's office. They'll probably want a statement from you." "I'll give them whatever they need." I hung up and sat down at the kitchen table. The house was quiet. Just the hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the clock on the wall. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Laura represented me, and Brooks showed up with a public defender. The judge listened to both sides. Brooks tried to explain, tried to justify. The judge didn't buy it. "Mr. Calix," she said, "you attempted to gain entry to a property that does not belong to you. You caused damage to that property, and you did so despite being formally notified that your presence was unwelcome. Do you understand the seriousness of these actions?" Brooks nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." "Then you also understand that this court has no choice but to find you guilty of attempted unlawful entry and property damage." "Your Honor, please." "The sentence is 6 months probation and restitution for the damage caused. You are also hereby ordered to have no contact with the plaintiff or the property in question. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Good. Court adjourned." The gavel came down. Brooks looked at me as he left the courtroom. His face was pale, his eyes red. Ariel stood beside him, one hand on her stomach, the other holding his arm. I didn't look away. Outside the courthouse, the sun was bright, the air warm. I stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of everything lift. Brooks was done. The house was mine. The fight was over. I'd won.